By 1710, London had grown to a city of about 700,000. The so-called City of Vice provided plenty of opportunities for crime. In wealthy areas, homeowners began to hire armed guards to protect them and their property. They could also hire thief-takers who operated as bounty hunters. For reward money, they caught criminals and handed them over to the authorities. They also located stolen goods. If a thief-taker caught a thief and this led to their conviction, the government paid out £40, about £6,000 in today's money, a huge amount. Unfortunately, the system was open to corruption. The best example of this is the case of Jonathan Wild. At the height of his fame, Jonathan Wild was London's most powerful lawman, a thief-taker, and an expert in reuniting people with their stolen goods. But there was a twist. Jonathan Wild operated on both sides of the law. To the public, he appeared as a crime fighter, catching thieves, highwaymen, and breaking up gangs. The hero London needed in the absence of a police force. But in secret, he was a powerful gang leader who controlled London's criminal underworld. In 15 years, Wild had risen from a petty criminal to the godfather of crime in London. The thieves of 18th century London found it easy to steal goods, but difficult to sell them on. This was partly because of the Bloody Code, which stated that anyone caught selling stolen goods would receive the death penalty. So thieves ended up selling stolen goods for a fraction of the value, because buying them just wasn't worth the risk. Wild realised that the people willing to pay the highest price for stolen goods were the original owners, especially if it was a sentimental item like a wedding ring or a notebook that contained information that the owner wouldn't want to become public. So Wild advertised a kind of lost property service. For a small fee, he would return stolen goods to their owners. His office in the Old Bailey was named the Lost Property Office. The system basically worked like this. Wild arranged for one of his own thieves to rob a wealthy individual of an item that they would want back. Then Wild advertised the services to the victim. In an anonymous meeting, the victim paid ransom money for the item back, then paid Wild his finder's fee. As long as Wild never touched the ransom money or the stolen goods, except for his finder's fee, he appeared to be doing everything above the law. He ran one of the greatest cons in history. Like all good con men, Wild found ways to make extra money. Any thief who refused to work for Wild's gang could be captured and sold to the authorities. There was little they could do about the situation. At the time, Daniel Defoe wrote, "If anything was lost in London, away we went to Jonathan Wild." And Wild was able to return the goods in a matter of days, which is hardly surprising given the fact that most thieves in London were working for him, and he likely arranged the robbery in the first place. Wild worked for the city's under-marshal, London's top law enforcement officer, Charles Hitchens, who was also a criminal. This helped give the impression that he was a legitimate crime fighter. At the height of his power, he was seen as London's protector and given the title Thief-Taker General of Great Britain and Ireland. He wore the finest clothes and carried a ceremonial sword of office. In 1720, the government asked Wild what they should do about the rising crime rate that he was partly responsible for. Wild told them to raise the bounty for thief-takers, and they did. Bounties rose from £40 to £140. A rise in reward money meant a rise in Wild's bank balance. Throughout his life, he kept a detailed record of every crime committed by the thieves who worked for him. Occasionally, Wild would have to dispose of his thieves. In his ledger, he would put an X by the crime he would have them tried for, and once he'd been executed, he'd add another X. They would literally be double-crossed. By the end of his life, there were over 60 double crosses in his ledger. At one point, Wild had so much stolen loot coming in, he had to get a ship to transport anything that he couldn't get back to its rightful owner. It made weekly trips to Holland. In 1725, the captain of the ship was arrested. Wild started a riot to allow him to escape, but this was too public and led to Wild's arrest. Public opinion was already turning against him because he was responsible for the execution of Jack Shepherd, a criminal many people idolised. At court, members of Wild's gang gave evidence against him for the crimes of receiving stolen goods and numerous other crimes. The judge found Wild guilty, condemned him to death, and the Lost Property Office was shut down. After a failed suicide attempt, the Thief-Taker General was hanged in 1725 at Tyburn before a massive crowd, perhaps the biggest in the history of Tyburn. He'd become so unpopular, he was booed, pelted with feces, dead cats and rats, and stones. The skeleton of the Thief-Taker General is on public display in London and evidences the violent life that he led. There's 2 fractures to the skull, 17 other wounds from swords, daggers and gunshots, and a cut across his throat from an attempted murder. The corruption of the thief-takers demonstrated the need for a more professional type of law enforcement. The name of Jonathan Wild was immortalised in a book, written 20 years after his death by Henry Fielding, a man who understood that the country needed better law enforcement. This would lead Fielding to create the country's first crime-fighting team, the Bow Street Runners.
Place your hands behind your back. You're under arrest.
You can't arrest me. I don't even know that you're a real cop.
Okay. Well, I think you have to take my word for it. See, the state gives me the legal authority to arrest you. Okay.
For all I know, you're a thief.
For all,
dressing up.
Okay. Jesus Christ.
He's rather nice one.